All right, it's now time for us to focus on data points, and you're really looking into what has happened to the budget of 2024-2025 over the past 1 month. And of course, this is informed by the decision by the president to reject the finance bill of 2024 that would have raised up to 344 billion shillings. That's the figure that we have there. Initially, the budget was totaling 3.99 trillion shillings. Now, the National Treasury Acting Cabinet Secretary, who is also the Prime Cabinet Secretary, that is Musalia Mudavadi, appeared before Parliament this week and indicated that the proposed budget cuts are 198 billion shillings, which is inclusive of some 20 billion shillings that are to be cut from the resources allocated to counties. And this is how it looks. Initially, the budget that was passed by Parliament in June of 2024, the development vote was up to 746 billion shillings. It is now being reduced to 623 billion shillings. The recurrent expenditure was set at 1.63 trillion shillings, has been reduced to 1.59 trillion shillings. And then the Consolidated Fund Services, that is CFS, it was initially supposed to be 1.21 trillion shillings. It is going up slightly to 1.23 trillion shillings. Of course, this is what goes into paying salaries, pensions, and gratuities and other concerns relating to that, which include the interest on loan. Then the counties had been allocated 400 billion shillings. The statement by PCS, Musalia Mudavadi, indicates that that allocation will rise to 410 billion shillings, but I will be explaining why it is rising, yet it's also reducing. So the total budget initially was 3.99 trillion shillings. It is being reduced to 3.87 trillion shillings, which is a reduction of 121 billion shillings. That is the effective reduction to the total size of the budget. Now, I just told you that initially the counties had been allocated 400 billion shillings. Now, the statement from the National Treasury indicates that that is being reduced by 20 billion shillings. That would mean it drops to 380 billion shillings. But there's some carryover resources from the previous financial year that ended 30th of June 2024 of 30.8 billion shillings. So the National Treasury is proposing that these resources be reverted in the current budget, and that is why the total eventually will be some 410 billion shillings. But it does not mean any extra resources, because those are resources that were owed to them anyway. Something else that is also coming up is that that supplementary budget that is totaling to 3.87 trillion shillings, this is how it's going to be raised or funded. The revenue projected is up to 3.05 trillion shillings. That is in the name of ordinary revenues, as well as what is projected to be appropriations in aid or collections from the ministries. Then there are grants of up to 51 billion shillings, and that leads to a deficit of 761 billion shillings. Remember, initially, by June 30th of 2024, the deficit at the time was 597 billion shillings. Because of the withdrawn finance bill, that is going up to 761 billion shillings, which will have to be raised through borrowing. Let's see how that will play out. Initially, the external debt or the external borrowing that was supposed to be done based on the previous budget was 333.8 billion shillings. That will rise slightly to 356 billion shillings. For the domestic market, the government was to borrow 263.2 billion shillings. Now that is going up by a whole 140 billion shillings to get to 404.6 billion shillings. Now you can see that is significant, because actually the domestic borrowing is going to be way more than the foreign borrowing. And of course, this will be mostly in treasury bills and bonds issued by the Central Bank of Kenya. Then there will be, so that total deficit of the borrowing that will be done is 761 billion shillings, as what is proposed in the numbers presented by the National Treasury to the National Assembly. So now, something else that is a bit of concern, of course, the pensions and gratuities have been increased. These are budget carryovers from the previous budget of 2023-2024. There are pensions and gratuities of 23.8 billion shillings. There are transfer to counties, which is just mentioned, of 30.8 billion shillings. And there is the NGCDF. These are resources that were owed to the National Government Constituency Development Fund of 13.5 billion shillings. They are being reverted in the current budget, meaning out of the 3.87 trillion shillings, the 68.1 billion shillings are resources that should have actually been sent to different institutions in the previous financial year. So there's some questions that are emerging. Well, we don't have that, but it's concerning what is happening to the road maintenance levy that the National Treasury is indicating that it will be raising more resources of up to 32 billion shillings that they hope that can be accruing to the exchequer. And of course, we'll be looking forward to seeing what happens after that, especially now that Parliament has reconvened. It will be considering these numbers in detail to give us what eventually should be the way forward for the budget of 2024-2025, which will be handled by a different cabinet secretary when the time comes. That's Data Point for this week. We take a short break. When we return, we have more stories, including